This is New Media TV in London.
Restructure Nigeria now before it's too late. A senior journalist in Nigeria, in a private chat shortly before he commenced this essay on Hot Topic, summarized the Tinubu leadership and what Nigerians brought upon themselves when they elected the man who answers the chieftaincy title of Jagaban. Nigerians don't know those they gave power to. People that kidnapped a whole Lagos. What does this tell us? President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his gang of power wielders today stole the hearts of the people with their reformist agenda while in opposition, and then also in opposition within their ruling party, the All Progressives Congress, APC. They told us that the solution to our problem is true federalism, which they argued, convincingly, would only be achieved through restructuring. By restructuring, they said that Nigeria must go back to its first love created by the British colonial rule when each region or state took its destiny into its own hands. One of the key elements of the much-talked-about restructuring is putting in place a security architecture that would ensure that as much as each crime is local, the solution to tackling it is also sourced locally. In essence, state policing is the base of a good security network. That was their stand then. Now that they are in power, what have they done in that direction? What has happened to the idea of restructuring and economic emancipation of the various states from the strangulation of a powerful central government? This is New Media TV in London. On our channels, we provide you with raw and undiluted information through digital content. We make it simple, capturing every moment of politics, bad leadership, poor governance throughout Africa and the black race, decapitated healthcare, collapse in infrastructure, bad education, and lack of sense of direction by the despotic leaders. If this is your first time on our channels, please don't forget to like us, rate us, and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Give us a thumbs up and hit the notification bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new video or live streaming. New Media TV. Beyond the headlines. News in its purest form. Let's get started. The senior journalist and the author of this fine piece declared, "My sense of patriotism would not allow me to call Nigeria a failed nation." Oh, really? Perhaps we ought to remind him of the fact that Frank Bello in London declared Nigeria an already failed state nearly 2 decades ago. 63 years after independence, the journalist noted, everything points in that direction. In the same write-up, he reminded us that Godwin Obaseki, governor of Edo State, warned Nigerians as far back as March 2022 that a dollar would be exchanged for 1,000 naira. They called him names. What is the situation today? I asked Google this question: what are the indices of a failed nation? This is the answer the search engine gave. Common indicators include a state whose central government is so weak or ineffective that it has little practical control over much of its territory, non-provision of public services, widespread corruption and criminality, refugees and involuntary movement of population, and sharp economic decline. Which of the factors listed here is absent in Nigeria today? When broken down into failed state, Google defines a failed state as having characteristics such as the presence of an insurgency, extreme political corruption, overwhelming crime rates suggestive of an incapacitated police force, an impenetrable and ineffectual bureaucracy, judicial ineffectiveness, military interference in politics. If Nigeria is not yet a failed nation, it is definitely not a nation in good health. The country is in an intensive care unit, ICU. Unfortunately, it appears our new husbands in Abuja are the pallbearers we have been waiting for. Nigerians are going through a very difficult situation at the moment. No one is spared in the pain and agony traversing the land. Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, is the most unsafe city in the country today 2024, 64 years after independence. That should ring the alarm in the corridors of power. What is happening in Abuja, especially with the spate of kidnappings over there, finds its roots in the saying of our sages. The wise ones of old once said that any wind that affects the one selling pap will render the yam flour seller empty. If Abuja is under constant attack from kidnappers, where else is safe in Nigeria? On Friday evening, 2 vehicles were attacked on the southwest Yoruba road by gunmen suspected to be kidnappers. Nobody knows how many occupants of the vehicles were taken into captivity by the gunmen. The story is the same all over the country. Early journeys are becoming prohibited. Late traveling is completely forbidden. Commuters and drivers alike must first calculate before they venture out to the roads. Non-state actors in the nation's security architecture have taken over. Our security agents, try as they may appear, are overwhelmed. You can't blame them. Many of them will dare not venture to go after the criminals, making life difficult for all of us. Why? What the policemen, for instance, are holding in the form of guns become like mere kiddies' toys in the face of the sophisticated weapons in the possession of the kidnappers. It is a case of a child suffering from convulsion and another suffering from real epilepsy. There is no basis for comparison. Nation Under Siege was a 2013 Nollywood film directed by the ace filmmaker Pascal Amanfo. Initially named Boko Haram, Western Education is Sin, before the title was changed. Many rose against the film because it was regarded as being insensitive to the religion of some people in northern Nigeria. While the controversy over the propriety of the title raged on due to the Islamic factor, we forgot the thematic preoccupation of the work. Today, Nigeria has moved away from the siege of Boko Haram and other insurgent groups. Descendants of the deadly Boko Haram are living with us and cutting short lives. Abuja is at the center of it all today. But I can take a bet, sooner than we all expect, what is happening in Abuja will be replicated in all cities, towns, and villages across Nigeria. Rest assured. To be truthful, life was hellish in the last 2 weeks of December 2023, and the first week of January 2024 for residents of Benin City, Edo State capital. That was the period when cultists virtually took over the ancient city. And it is happening all over the Federation. One begins to ask, who is in charge? And really, is there anybody in charge of Nigeria at the moment? A friend told me last week that it is uncharitable for anyone to blame President Bola Tinubu for the happenings in Nigeria today. He said so and looked at me directly to read my reactions or hear my comment. I responded, shaking my head, by saying that I agreed with him, even though I also know that it is most idiotic for anyone to absolve President Tinubu from all that has happened to Nigerians since the 29th of May, 2023, when he was sworn in as President of Nigeria. I would have said more, but I realized that he is slightly older in age. It beats my imagination that we still have fellas who feel that President Tinubu should not carry the kind of blame for the problems and calamities that are befalling Nigeria. While it is true that Tinubu is not the sole architect of the current situation, nobody can argue that the president has not been part and parcel of the problem right from the beginning of this political dispensation. More than anything else, President Tinubu midwifed the lethargic government of General Muhammadu Buhari, a government that took the nation to the bottom of economic woes and insecurity. Whichever way you perceive this, for the 8 years that the Fulani-born retired general ruined Nigeria, not a whimper was heard from Bola Tinubu. Eventually, when Tinubu took over power in May 2023, rather than chart a new course for the nation, he took the baton and dashed the finishing line, carrying the baggage of the rudderless leadership of Buhari alongside. Nothing has changed except that our situation has moved from bad to worse, while we wait helplessly for the worst to happen. So, why should we then excuse Tinubu from the present calamities? A senior journalist, in a private chat with me, shortly before I commenced this essay, summarized the Tinubu leadership and what Nigerians brought upon themselves when they elected the man who answers the chieftaincy title of Jagaban as president. Thus, Nigerians don't know those they gave power to. People that kidnapped a whole Lagos. What does this tell us? President Tinubu and his gang of power wielders today stole the hearts of the people with their reformist agenda while in opposition, and then also in opposition within their ruling All Progressives Congress (APC). They told us that the solution to our problem is true federalism, which they argued, convincingly, would only be achieved through restructuring. By restructuring, they said that Nigeria must go back to its first love where, and when, each region or state took its own destiny into its own hands. One of the key elements of the much talked about restructuring is putting in place a security architecture that would ensure that as much as each crime is local, the solution to tackling it is also sourced locally. In essence, state policing is the base of a good security network. That was their stand then. Rewind. Bola Tinubu, in a nationwide newspaper published by this day Sunday the 13th of April 1997, declared, "I don't believe in one Nigeria." Chief BC Akande, Azosun state governor-elect on the 8th of March 1999, said in an interview in Tel magazine that Nigeria may be dismantled. BC Akande went further by saying in 1999, if Nigeria is not restructured in another 10 years, there will be no Nigeria. But there will be the Yoruba nation. 21 years later, on the 30th of September 2020, this same BC Akande, as interim chairman of the All Progressives Congress (APC), says the Yoruba will be at war for 100 years if Nigeria breaks up. On Monday the 29th of March 2000, Muhammadu Buhari claimed in an article published in Tel magazine that the breakup of Nigeria was imminent as northern elders threatened Nigeria. Now that they are in power, what have they done in that direction? What has happened to the idea of restructuring Nigeria and the economic emancipation of the various states from the strangulation of a powerful central government? In the old order of Nigeria during the colonial period and the three regional formations, we knew who to ask if, for instance, a goat was missing, especially a day to the market day. If, on the other hand, someone's yam tubers were dug up by an unknown individual, the elders in the village knew the man to call to ask if he saw someone going to someone's farm. That was the local policing. Every community knows the criminal elements in the town. The criminals themselves are aware that the people are not ignorant of their criminal activities, and as such, they conform. In today's Nigeria, 64 years after independence from colonial Britain, state governors are called chief security officers of their states. Good appellation. But when the chips are down, a state commissioner of police, CP, is not answerable to his host governor. Every state commissioner of police waits for the Inspector General of Police, IGP, in Abuja to give the directive before any action can be taken. This is why it is absolutely impossible for any state governor today to deploy policemen or any other security agent to any troubled spot in his state. The entire Southwest was under the siege of killer herdsmen for almost 2 years before the late Governor Rotimi Akeredolu of Ondo State, may God bless his soul, rallied the other state governors in the region to establish the Emoticon Security Corps to tackle the menace. For the advocates of Tinubu should not be blamed for the happenings in Nigeria today. Let them tell us what Tinubu's Lagos contributed to the Emoticon initiative. What was his attitude and that of his protégé governor in Lagos towards the establishment of Emoticon? From all indications, the centralized security architecture we have today cannot address the spate of insecurity in the nation. This is New Media TV in London. Live stream with confidence. Let's carry on. Whatever fear one might have before that state governors and their ilk might hijack state police to the detriment of opposition has paled into insignificance in the face of insecurity in the country. The old advocates of restructuring are now in power. President Tinubu must take that bold step of restructuring not only Nigeria, but our security architecture the same way he took the bold step of removing petroleum subsidy and floating the naira. If he could drastically take those steps that have brought the majority of the Nigerian populace to an economic nadir, he may as well tackle the menace of restructuring Nigeria and the problem of insecurity in the same manner to ameliorate their fears. The criminals in Abuja are becoming more audacious. They no longer wait on the highways to kidnap. They now go into people's homes to pick them up like chickens in a poultry cage. Abuja is the seat of power. At a time, some criminals threatened to kidnap General Buhari from Aso Rock Villa. The teeth-picking general responded by doubling his security personnel. Criminals stormed Kuje Correctional Center, a distance of fewer kilometers than 4 from the villa, and freed their members. Nothing happened. Not even the soldiers who dismounted their roadblocks on the Kuje prison road, hours before the attack, were punished. We heard, again, that insurgents took delivery of a weapon that could allow them to shoot down the president's jet, and that the government had to pay a huge ransom to repossess the equipment. The only response from the government then was the usual feeble denial, and the labeling of the news as fake news and hate speech. Gradually, kidnappers are taking over, spreading their evil tentacles across the length and breadth of the country. Army estates, security checkpoints, soldiers, civilians, wives, and children are not spared. Both the army and the police are giving us conflicting accounts of how the kidnapped victims in Abuja were rescued. Nobody knows who rescued who, and if anybody was actually rescued, because the army, in its explanation, said the kidnappers left the victims. To worsen the situation, family members of the victims are also claiming that they paid huge ransom raised through crowdfunding. That is the confusion in Abuja at the moment. The shrine of the combustion-fighting deity is in flame. Who will quench the fire in the king's palace? The only place that appears safe now is the villa. But for how long? When what is edible gets exhausted, won't the hungry turn to that which is not edible? If the bold and daring kidnappers in Abuja could successfully raid homes and estates unhindered, what stops them from taking on the presidential villa? Other news. Tinubu says, we'll continue to fight corruption to fix Nigeria. Northern senators kick against relocation of CBN Department's aviation agency to Lagos. Governor Akeredolu of Ondo State is to be buried on the 23rd of February 2024. Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, FAN, relocation to Lagos. 15 Yoruba groups slam Northern youth's protest. This is New Media TV. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.